The first
motivate?
thing, because I had only run 2 cohorts at the time, and I think I only had three. I think back then I think it was only 3 live sessions per cohort. And when you run a Maven course, all of your sessions are recorded in Zoom, so students who can't join live can watch them later. So I could easily just like download the transcripts of those sessions. And I think the first version I did, I had yet to bifurcate the product sense copilot and the analytical. I just tried to make one that does both. I just took all the transcripts and I dropped them right in there. And then I think I went into the instructions, and I knew none of them would tell Claude what I wanted Claude to do. So what I went into the instructions and I said something like, take all these transcripts and treat them as the knowledge for how to handle product sense and analytical thinking interviews. Each new chat in this session is going to be basically a simulated interview where you're playing the candidate and the human is playing the interviewer. And I want you to internalize all the frameworks and basically check in with the human as if it's a real interview, come up with the content in a way that honors all the guardrails and the files. And it didn't like quite work, but I kind of started to develop an intuition for how to make it better. And I think the first big intuition was I need to split out analytical thinking and product sense, because there are actually different things that are supposed to get covered in these, and it's like 2 different conversations. So you can't blame AI for why it doesn't do a good job with either if it's trying to do both in one. So I kind of unbundled them and took the transcripts just for the product sense lectures, and then the transcripts just for the analytical thinking lectures, and I created the first version of the custom instructions for both. And that's when it started.
Like two projects basically per
2
total,
projects.
one for each.
Totally. 2 projects, 1 for each. And that's when it started to go from like, this definitely doesn't work, to like, okay, there's definitely a path for this to work. Like, this is like, it started to feel almost like immediately incremental improvements pay off. And the specific way that I did the incremental improvements was, there's really only 2 levers: the files and the instructions. Obviously, the third lever is out of my control, which is which model is running. But my assumption was, as the models get better and better, which I should just assume, and we should continue assuming, then theoretically, as long as the context is the right context and the instructions are the right instructions, then the output in the chat sessions should just get like better and better and better, right? And I think at that time it was Sonnet 3, maybe 3.5, but it was maybe even 2.7. I don't know. I forget the versions at this point. But yeah, it started. So I would ask a question, and like it was almost like you're immediately. So we talked. I told you that when we talk about this, like I've had some thoughts about evals, because if you gave someone else who was not, I don't say not me, because that makes me sound special, but not like a calibrated interviewer for the kinds of interviews that the Copilot's meant to help with. And you, like Mark, you were never like a calibrated interviewer at Meta. So even though you're like super, super smart, if I put you at the starting point of like, hey, here's this Copilot, here's the output, how would you improve it? You wouldn't have the domain knowledge to know what exactly is off, right?
Totally.
But because I had all that knowledge, I started tinkering with the instructions. So basically I'd generate a response, and from the very first response, I would be like, okay, looks like it doesn't know that when I ask a question, the first thing it should do is basically check in with me about like the assumptions it wants to make, and then the game plan for the interview, and it shouldn't get into any of the content before it does those things. So then I would like go into the instructions, and I would hard code, be like, when starting the interview, the first thing you should do is this, never do this until you've done these things. And then I would go back in the chat and I would hit I think it's called the retry button in the chat. And I would say retry with no changes, and retry with no changes would regenerate the response, but it would do a fresh call to like the latest instructions. So that allowed me to basically tinker my way until I was ready to go to the next step and the next step and the next step, until it got to the point. This is definitely like it took many, many hours to do it across both Copilots, but that was the fundamental process of kind of like iterating to the point where it passed my, human vibe evals.